For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Thabi Madiba, researcher and analyst. Professor Raymond Suttner joins me to discuss ANC recovery and democratic recovery, not the same thing. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
Can you briefly tell us whether ANC recovery and democratic recovery are mutually exclusive?
No, they can be the same. They can be part of the same process in the sense that if the ANC is the bearer of democracy, which it was the prime force in bringing democratic rule to South Africa. In that situation, joining the ANC, voting for the ANC, is to vote for democracy. But where the ANC does things that are anti-democratic, well then, or partly democratic and partly undemocratic, well then you can't see them as being exactly the same thing. You can't equate them, because in the 1980s, let's say, or up to 1994, we used to talk about the democratic struggle, and we meant the struggle led by the ANC. In that period, one didn't think of the Nationalist Party, Freedom Front, and the Democratic Party was very slow to come to universal suffrage and things like that.
And how have the ANC and democracy changed since the leadership of Nelson Mandela, Jacob Zuma, and now Cyril Ramaphosa?
Well, it's a number of different phases. In the Nelson Mandela period, I think the ANC was not very keen in continuing to have popular power, people showing their own power outside of the organization, outside of voting. They wanted to normalize politics in South Africa, and although they used the power of people to break deadlocks in the negotiations, once there was a democratic constitution, they really wanted the ANC. They didn't spell it out, but I think most people in the leadership wanted it to be an electoral machine, so that instead of the people finding a way that the people themselves governed in a number of different ways by voting, but also by doing things in their own spheres as human beings in organizations and so forth, they were represented. They had an indirect power. That was one phase. It's not anti-democratic, but it displaces the popular. In the Thabo Mbeki period, there was a degree of centralization. You had a lot of decisions that were, or a lot of discussions in a small group of people who were close to him, and there wasn't this sense of a vibrant organization. And that's what Zuma used, or the Zuma supporters used, to oppose Mbeki, claiming that Zuma would be the remedy for this, a people's leader, and things like that. And what happened under Zuma is it was a very violent period, from with shoot to kill, his trying to embody in himself a version of masculinity that was militaristic, but it was also a period where the good things of life that were meant gradually to be provided, or speedily to be provided to the people of the country, were often stolen or diverted or depleted in corrupt deals, not just in Kandla, but a range of procurement deals and so forth. You can see in the paper today about, and yesterday, how the funds of SASA were just squandered on projects that are not properly accounted for, actually billions. And it appears that was used to do something to do with the ANC December elections. It's not proved yet. So there were a number of ways. Also, one of the things that one gets from the Freedom Charter is that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, and the identities of all people are respected. Now, a lot of Zuma's discourse was chauvinistic, 100% Zulu, he was referred to as, and also he'd make pronouncements about women, that their job is to have children and things like this. And there was a setback in terms of cultural flourishing of a range of types. It was what I call, or what is called essentialist, that you have an idea of what an African is. African doesn't have dogs, doesn't have psychological problems, only whites have these things, and a whole lot of nonsense like that. But all had the effect of inhibiting people from being what they wanted to be, even though the law allowed for people to have freedom of sexual orientation. There was a very low level of tolerance of that in the Zuma period. In the Ramaphosa period, you've got some recovery of legality and regularity, but the notion of popular is not there. It's a case of representative democracy, people being voted to act on your behalf.
Many have shown confidence in Ramaphosa's leadership, but what about his inability to remove corrupt members from his cabinet?
Well, I think that from an ANC point of view and from Ramaphosa's point of view, he has to work carefully, and he wants to maintain a stable base and convince some of the people who supported JZ or who supported Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma that the future lies with him and that they should not try and undermine his leadership. Also, he may be thinking that sooner or later the law is going to take its course and some of these people will be charged. But if he were to move against them now, he only got just over 50% of the vote. He doesn't know yet how much more support he's got now. He's probably got more support now. And also people jump ship when they see this is the leader and all of that. But he wants to have it clear in people's mind that he is the future, but also hopefully that some people will go to jail for corruption, things like that. Now, we as citizens are put in a difficult situation because we have to wait for ANC processes to take their course, even though there are people in the cabinet against whom there are very strong allegations of corruption. And if you are a strong ANC member, some of the top 6 are people against whom there are strong allegations of corruption. So these are the problems that he faces, but you can't, it's not a simple answer. Personally, I give conditional support to Cyril Ramaphosa in the sense that I will do my best to strengthen his hand insofar as his hand is being used to clean up the state and to foster democracy. If he relapses very badly, well then that's why I say in the article we need the power of us as active citizens to try to make a difference.
And last week the DA criticized Ramaphosa for placing the Northwest Province under administration. They said he was using the constitution to deal with their political impasse. Do you agree with them?
Well, it's a political, internal ANC thing, but it's also an issue of governance. I think it was correct to put the Northwest under administration because there'd been a breakdown, especially, but not only, in the housing department. There had been diversion of state funds in a number of different ways, and I think there had to be a clampdown and was constitutionally correct, not just good for the ANC, because some people in the ANC don't like that.
What about the land issue? Is the ANC handling this issue well, and it is the key to absolute democracy?
Well, I think absolute democracy, or I don't know if there is such a thing as absolute democracy, but democracy and land I'd like to separate. I think the ANC had a resolution in December which came through because some of the people were using it like radical economic transformation as a slogan, and others felt they couldn't speak against it because land hunger is so serious. But you don't really need to change the constitution. And I think what they're trying to do is to say, look, let's test what we can do with the constitution, and then if that works, and we do want expropriation without compensation, but according to the constitution, if that works, then we don't have to change the constitution. If it doesn't work, then we talk again. And the thing is that if you look at the last 20 odd years, they haven't really tried to expropriate without compensation. Under the Constitution, Section 25, one of the ways of acquiring land is to expropriate. And equitable value amount may be millions, but it can be zero, and it can depend on the conditions. And I think they must use that. Former Deputy Chief Justice Moseneke once said that he's waiting for a case to come to test this clause. The government has never really tried it. Willing seller, willing buyer is not part of the law, not part of the Constitution. So I think given the decision in December and the atmosphere surrounding it where they made this decision, they have to try and steer it towards testing Section 25. And when they test Section 25 and they find that they can do it with Section 25, well then changing the Constitution need not arise.
And talking about the land, is the ANC using this land issue maybe to win support leading up to the 2019 elections? Or?
Yeah, I think that obviously a lot of people, you know, land occupations every day, things like that. So maybe it can, but it's been part of ANC doctrine for a long time. It's in the Freedom Charter. However, what I think they're doing, you know, everything that any party does, they do with a view to winning support. But I think that this is a very difficult one to steer, and they're trying to steer it in a way that wins, that meets the demand, but also does not destroy food production and does not create a level of instability where there's massive disinvestment as there was in Zimbabwe.
And lastly, can we say we have recovered democratically, and will the ANC recover?
We haven't recovered yet democratically. We're busy rebuilding, I think. Or let's say, it would be wrong to say we haven't recovered in constitutional sense. The Constitution is still in place, but the vibrancy that there used to be in democracy, largely led by the ANC, is not really there at the moment. All the opposition parties are in disarray. I'm not sure whether the ANC will recover. If it does win elections, it will not necessarily be an ANC where there's vibrant debate. What is the debate in the ANC? I mean, can't remember anything that anyone has said that is sparked my imagination for a long time now. There used to be a lot of things said. I mean, when the ANC was illegal and there was radio freedom, listen to radio freedom illegally and you really get a lot of ideas from there. Now, those days are past.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about ANC recovery and democratic recovery, not the same thing.